Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Shuey, and I am the founder and CEO of Happily, which is a network of the largest collection of freelance virtual and live event specialists. And every Wednesday at 2 p.m. PST, I invite one of my friends and colleagues to come in and talk with me about, I don't know, all sorts of stuff. Honestly, it's a mixed bag, but hopefully things that will be useful for you as you're navigating this virtual reality. And today, we are going to be talking with one of my faves, D.S Chun. DS, say hello.
Hi. Hello, everybody.
DS and I were introduced by Kate Parsons of Fembit when I was in the process of like trying to find people to help me create this like wacky vision I had for a cyber wedding. And so we are recently new friends, but like I feel so deeply connected, like lifetimes connected to DS. Oh, yeah, let's hold hands or like
Does
let's
this
high
work?
five. Yeah, let's bow. We can bow.
This is great. I love it.
This is great. Oh my gosh, next time let's get business cards and like give them together.
Yeah, I'm gonna set out some punch on it, just like
Oh my god, yeah, you can feed me. That'd be amazing. Okay. So as you can see, like we love each other and or at least I like worship DS. He knows he always like
it's
embarrassed me.
mutual. It's mutual.
Yay! Okay, so here I go. I'm gonna hype, hype, hype. Wait, you sent me your bio, and I like that you include it says like D.S Chun, 1983, USA. Like
Yeah,
very nice.
yeah. Get stats like right out of the way.
It reads like a press release. You know how like press like kind of you know how press releases put like the date and location. It's cool. I like it. It's also like wiki. Like wiki always. I hope for some reason I don't know about you, but if
I
I'm
think
wiki
that's what it is. Yeah, I think it's like wiki infection.
right, I always
Yeah.
look at the year. So you're also Korean, but you're full Korean, right?
hmm Yeah.
Do you speak Korean?
Yeah, but I'm not gonna embarrass myself here.
Oh no, don't do it because I don't really. And then it's like, and then I embarrass myself.
No, yeah, it goes up and down depending on like how immersed I am in these years. I have not been.
And wait, you lived in Korea though, right?
Yeah, for 3 years.
Okay. How old were you?
Hard to remember, but like mid 20s, I think. Yeah.
Oh, so as an adult,
hmm Yeah.
do you like
Yeah.
K-pop?
I like it more now. I think like when it was booming, the like nationalistic like marketing campaign behind it was really hard to ignore,
Hmm.
especially having a lot of like female artist friends there and here that are Korean that kind of saw what that was doing in narrativizing women's bodies in that genre. But then as it's evolved and as like the conversation around it has evolved, it's hard to ignore like how amazing some of the music and like music videos are. Um,
Blackpink.
yeah.
Okay, so you're Korean American, but you're born in the States,
Yeah.
in California?
Yeah. Born up in Sunnyvale, I think. Yeah.
Sunnyvale. Wow.
Yeah. Before everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then for everything. And you went to UCLA for creative writing. That's
Mhm.
cool. How come you
Yeah.
didn't go to USC where I went to school?
Well, funny story about that. So both my parents are pastors. My dad made a lot of money doing real estate speculation and lending initially, and then his wife, my mother, converted and was so passionate about it. He, for some reason, decided to give up his career and then follow in her footsteps and become ordained. And
Did you go to like
so
Azusa or something? Did like
well, it was more this like idea of like the people's university versus like the more prestigious university, and I was interested in both. It in a funny turn of fate, like UCLA made sense in undergrad just to stay close and for a cost, but then a couple of years ago, I applied and then got into USC Film School for documentary. But then I don't know if you've kept track, like the tuition for the film school.
It's
Yeah,
always been like laughable.
yeah, but it basically inflated 300%. Like
What
from
is
the
it now?
year I applied to, it was, I don't know now, but 2 years ago it would be $235,000 for 3 years. Yeah. So
I
that
just had to
was a
puke.
reason
Like
to
that
back
was
away from
crazy.
that. Yeah. And have since been very happily independently producing with friends and colleagues.
$250,000.
Yeah.
That
So
doesn't even cover like you like going like your apartment or your rent or anything like that.
I think that figure does, but it
Okay.
definitely doesn't cover the production cost of your thesis film, which you're supposed to raise money for on
Right.
your own. Yeah.
I was a producer on a student film at USC, and like yeah, it was an award-winning indie thing. It went to the films and stuff, like film festival
That's
circuit.
awesome.
And I remember like calling all of the like DPs at all the TV shows. Like we ran out of film. We ran out of 35 millimeter film. And I was calling everyone asking for their ends. Is that what, right? Like it's so long ago.
Yeah.
And like I had hustled enough people to get enough ends to finish the film.
That's hustle. That's really cool.
Isn't that funny? That's like what, yeah, that was like my big contribution, I would say, for that project. But yeah, I was surprised actually. That was even, yeah, I'm dating myself. I'm like, that was pre-Kickstarter. I guess everyone does it on Kickstarter now.
Which I think it's like really just an ebb and flow, because USC in its history has had times where like it's had like opening of like the Lucas Foundation bringing in scholarships, and there have been different years I think when it's been more open, and thanks to that we did get some great directors come out of there in our generation that were from underserved or marginalized communities, but I think for me the timing just never worked out, which was fun.
And so you're like more of a documentary filmmaker, right?
That's right.
And why did you choose that?
That is a question I've been answering in various forms a lot recently, because of a couple going to Prism Fellowship at True False Film Festival, where we're talking a lot about that. But I think for me, it was growing up immersed in language, whether it was in the church and how much of the church is about literary analysis and communicating that in a clear way that's not so academic or elitist to a large population, and to do that to engage their emotional response. That is the groundwork of spiritual work. And then moving beyond that to teaching and communicating with students all the time. And finding that with those two, they kind of gave me the skill set of understanding a lot of stimuli and systems that are happening in the world around me, and how to condense them and tell them in a comprehensible, emotional, enjoyable format of a story, or in more experimental filmmaking in nonfiction that I've done, not a story, but just time-based medium experience. And those, I think, combine honestly with a young experience I had with my family. Our uncle on my mother's side owned a grocery store in K-Town, and survived through the Los Angeles uprising. There was looting of his store. He defended his store. But we were growing up, and my parents not really being able to explain why the LAPD weren't helping people like my uncle, or the people that were expressing their rage through rioting. And then growing up and understanding the kind of infrastructure and power dynamics within mass media and independent media within America itself over time, and seeing, you know, a few documentaries come out and a few great projects come out about that period, but having that more kind of embedded in me, as it was an experience that so many of us went through, that changed our city forever, that defined relationships between people on the ground so differently before and after, and that some stories just aren't told because they don't include the people that experienced it in the best light or in favor in terms of social hierarchies of power. And so that kind of drew me more and more to nonfiction, even though I was trained in poetry and fiction writing. I was always drawn to kind of using my talents to discover and tell the stories of the communities I'm a part of and that I witnessed.
It's really beautiful and like yeah. Well, anyways, I'm really glad that we're friends so that we can talk about like honestly unpacking like the seven, I think I was counting it, like seven like very meaty like sort of purpose, like points of purpose for your work is gonna take a lifetime of knowing you, and that's really exciting. There's yeah, and I think that's really interesting that you sort of talk about like, okay, so you're some of the themes that I caught up with were the emotional quality of storytelling, learning being something that's accessible, which I think is really interesting that you tie back to the church. And we've talked a little bit about like I don't know actually if you knew that I also had this like really crazy like deep background with church too. Oh my God. We'll talk about it another time. But I was like a Bible quiz like national champion at the age of like 8. It's a whole thing, dude. And then but also, and I think it's also interesting like that you bring in like sort of LA and your Korean Americanism family and also the power structures and dynamics and which is which helps sort of propel your motivation to tell stories that are not being heard, right? And in such a way. And I think like in experimental filmmaking, as like I was like interviewing like different like people to help me tell our story for Cyber Wedding, for instance, I was like, oh, they're experimental filmmakers. They're perfect for cyber world because having a sort of like open mind and also like a maybe it's not a familiarity, but a sort of a comfort or like a bravery. I don't know. I'm lacking the word to say like where we're playing with different time structures and also with different formats and sort of ways to go about things. We're all innovating right now. It was something that I felt was something where I felt like really confident that even though we hadn't worked together, I was like, oh, like they're gonna nail it. And I think you did actually. And if you remember, like when we were how did it unfold? I was like, oh, I really wanted to do a karaoke music video because I love karaoke. And that was where my idea sort of started, and there was not much, right?
But that is the world. Yeah, and that's why that's why Kate ended up referring me, right? Because of the previous film I had made. Yeah, I think, well, one, talking about the way that you saw the idea of collaborating with experimental filmmakers was really well said. And I think experimental filmmakers ourselves, we have a lot of trouble defining that and explaining that. But I don't want to use words like native or experienced, but I think just having spent a lot of time in processes trying these micro experiments out of like what does it do to a viewer when you switch perspectives this rapidly and say a flicker film or alter color or use color as a language, et cetera, these all things then become available tools in the kit to use them all into tapestry in a finished product. And so when you brought up karaoke music video, just for everyone out there, I made an attempt at a short film years ago. Thank you. It's the funny thing about that short is like we started it. I wasn't ready to do that yet. I had, I was overambitious, and I started and I got crew and cast and rehearsed, but it wasn't something I could finish because I wasn't ready to finish it and the elements weren't there. But then I had all these component pieces. And so for years I reconfigured it in different edits to different formats. And one of my favorites was one that I came to LA with, was a recutting of an entire narrative short film that repeats the same story from a father's perspective and then a daughter's perspective. But instead turn both of those perspective-based narrative copies into separate karaoke music videos.
Yeah.
So I was just like I was explaining, like it was a micro experiment that was like not even like meant to be the whole film, but it turned out to have a great impact on people when they were watching it. It was something that like was an unexpected confirmation for me that, oh, this is a language that actually could work. And since then, like we've seen a couple different artists engaging with karaoke as an art language in video art and film since then, which is great.
Oh yeah, weren't you the one that told me that like most of the karaoke that videos that were made by like one guy? Was that, or is it you or somebody else?
I don't think so. Yeah.
Oh, so there's this, maybe it was Mustafa, but like I guess like there's like one guy that had created hundreds of karaoke music videos.
That doesn't surprise me. That's
like
really
all
cool.
the absurd ones.
Yeah.
He just like kept getting hired to do them.
Which I'm also wondering, because we're talking about like the Sunfly like collection mostly, right? And there's a couple other big ones, but that collection, like, I'm wondering where they got their location budgets from, or whether they had access to some like travel shows archives, because there's so many set in like Denmark, Thailand, like Laos, like really, really specific locations.
Yeah.
But they have like the same directorial like absurdity in them.
it was all B-roll.
It's amazing.
You know? Okay, yeah. wait, I'm gonna show like a little bit. I thought it would be fun to show like a bit of the like do a director's edit. What did you call it? Like when people are like talking over narration, like,
oh, you want to do a commentary?
That's what I want to do. Are you down?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that we can talk a little, like by showing people and like talking through it, then they can understand like what we did a little bit better than just. Okay. So let's see here. I'm gonna go and bring up my screen. Okay, wait. First of all, this is the dog from Animal Crossing, and I didn't know until like literally last week after I finished Animal Crossing that little Easter egg was in there.
Yeah, KK Slider is a personal hero.
KK Slider is the best. And so what we're looking at is actually all of this stuff was directed by you, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, kind of, but I think that's what we should throw out there is that you guys had a really nice vision based on your understanding of the music video genre, right? About like the Rose Garden stuff. And you wanted to participate in shooting it in this kind of self-directed improv way first.
Right.
And it was a great way for me to feed off of that.
Yeah, like the cheesiness of the like smile and like the everything, like because we had, I guess like I was like, oh, let's make this music video, and then quarantine happened, shelter in place, so we couldn't actually be in the same spot at once. Like what we're seeing now is actually Rose Garden. Like one day, like Coco and I went to the Rose Garden where our original venue was, and then we just shot stuff, and then I sent all this footage to you, and I was like, here, make a music video, and you guys are like, cool, we can use this, and let's also add some stuff. So everything that's like in our house is all like, you guys just wrote out like it wasn't even a script, it was kind of like a shot list, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a hybrid document there. And I think for the like discussion of remote production, I think thinking back, could we have started with that kind of a process where the director just conceives of an idea that, of course, takes all of the quarantine safety measures into account, and then sends it to the subjects or clients or collaborators, and then says, go for it, and self-shoot. I think that's possible, but what the incidental way we went about it was also so much richer, I think, for the video as a whole, because one, you guys were being artists yourself and generating not only, crazy thoughts like this, but also showing us
the Naruto run, yeah,
showing us what you're interested in, what you like, what your aesthetic is. And within this, when I see that, like, I was looking at the footage back to back just based on file number, which I'm assuming was the shooting order.
Yeah.
Not assuming that you were telling me any kind of story, but watching it as if, okay, this is all just one long extended experimental film, and here's what these artists sent me. If we're being asked to then make a cut down for a social media platform or something where it needs to be a little more narrative and a little more accessible, what are the potential stories within this? And the kind of longing to be outside, the romance of being outside, but then also that these two key shots, the one of kissing with masks on and then eating the rose, could we elevate that somehow? And knowing that shooting at home would be the safest place that you guys could work at that point, which is not in quarantine, right? Like, this is peak paranoia. We don't know what's happening. So we're just going to stay in the home. And so that's when I kicked in the narrative process of, let's build a story so that the rose garden stuff that they brought us, which was a really pure expression on your guys' end, could then integrate into a way that the audience could engage with it in sharing your desire.
That's so funny because, like, I mean, I also love this part at the end. Like, it was like you like really truly nailed it. Like, you did it. You like, well done. Like, I was like, oh yeah, this is exactly like looks and feels like a karaoke music video. And actually, we never talked about this like in depth, like that. I didn't realize, like, okay, so we sent this like footage, and then you're like the eating the rose, which was a very last minute thing. I was like, just like, oh, we need to do something absurd. And I was like, Coco, like, film me eating a rose petal. He was like, why? And I was like, I don't know why, but it seems like something that you would see in a karaoke music video. And so this like totally just, I was just like, mindlessly, really, like trying to like emulate like what a karaoke music video. So interesting that you took that and like unwound it into a story. And also the story that you brought was about like you brought this juxtaposition of us being in the house and like in quarantine, and like really brought it to a present day moment, which was also something that I mean I didn't really think through. So that was really cool. I remember when I read the shot list, I was like, is this too on the nose? Yeah,
that's what one, we had just met, right? And we were meeting in like a client vendor kind of relationship as well. And so it was like loose, but also pretty formal. And I didn't really understand your guys' personalities yet. And so I was also kind of worried about it being on the nose, but that's why the rose eating was such a key moment for me of discovery, is just seeing that like you guys are in conversation with the genre you are making, right? Like you are chasing after a thing, but doing it in a totally unique way. And that's what I wanted to preserve and honor, and then bring that to. So it's that moment of when the rose petal goes into the mouth. I don't think it's anything like climactic, but I think it really seals the deal because everything else is built around it. And so if it is cheesy and on the nose, so be it, that's the genre we're in, but then you kind of break it a little bit at that moment.
Right. No, it's funny because people have said like, oh, we can't look at you anymore. Like, we can never not see you eating that. Like, OCD friend is like, ew.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, and now everyone is like remote directing, right?
Mhm.
People are starting to catch up that like all these virtual events and experiences is kind of like a big giant experimental film that you interact with. You
Mhm.
I'm curious to know where you think this all goes and like if you have any sort of suggestions or, advice for people
Mhm.
who are trying to be collaborative with the way that they go about creating this sort of end piece from a distance.
Totally, yeah. And I'm curious, like, would now be a good time to bring up kind of a topic we've been discussing a lot privately of cybernetics and that
Yes.
area?
Okay. Wait. Then let me read this to
Okay,
people.
let's do
Okay.
it.
We also like I usually do this for 30 minutes. So we're going over time, people, and like I can
Right.
make that executive decision if you can make that executive decision. Hold on, let me look at my like
Yeah,
calendar really quick. I think that's okay. This happens to us all the time, by the way. Every time we have
yeah, that's true.
a meeting, I'm like, wait, we have to go over. We have to go over. Yes, okay. I've got 30 more minutes. Do you have 30 more minutes?
I do, yeah.
Okay, we'll do whatever. And like, you know what? If
Mhm.
you guys don't want to watch, then goodbye. We'll see you later to do the replay. So, okay. This is part of your bio, actually, like on your website,
Mhm.
dschun.com. Everybody go in the about section, and you talk about in your about section also like you talk about like your dog, I think Frasier, right? Which I think is really like charming. I also like yes, you do read a lot of books, and every time we talk, like you give me like book homework, which I love. You watch 2 to 3 films a day, which I think is cool. And I was like, dang, how can I do that? Um, and oh, you are like a good oppa. You love your sister's 3 kids. And this, it says, I believe empirical review of our social history through the framework of cybernetics is the right approach to building a better society. But who read this far? So I did read that far. So
Yeah.
well, first of all, can you explain to us like what kind of framework do you think that we're currently looking
Mhm.
at our social history under?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it is kind of a short-sighted causality loop, which is evidenced in both the kind of polarized major left and right news platforms, CNN, Fox News, and all of the concomitant smaller platforms beneath them that feed back the the cause of present day shocking, salacious events to maybe something 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, but never references kind of an overarching meta history that connects all of these, that has a cumulative process of political progress or conversation in dialogue between 2 opposing parties. Um, and yes, we all know it's to do sound bites, to do advertising, to get number of clicks per minute, etc. But then the way that we integrate that into our own understanding by supporting platforms that do that and by not demanding in the marketplace other platforms that break out of that, though there are several alternative micro platforms available, um, we kind of end up engaging in that. And it's hard to point the finger at the people.
Right.
It's like I myself feel exhausted by that all the time. But I think the inspiration for this was a really interesting origin for me. Of I was in, uh, watching that documentary, All Washed Over by Machines of Loving Grace, by Adam Curtis 4 or 5 years ago. It was really mind blowing, and he was tracking kind of the birth of the history of ecology within that. And I don't know, I've been like an environmentalist minded person since middle school, just being growing up in Southern California. And ecology always sounded like the ultimate science to me, of something where you understand every single organism within an ecosystem's needs and desires, and behaviors, and can kind of map out the system like as if it were a computer motherboard. But then brilliantly, Curtis breaks that down and points out like all of that was based on false evidence of one guy that founded kind of the discipline, and yet it still kind of continues today, limping along as a pseudoscience. But he was able to do that by analyzing the history of ecology and all of these different experts that said, yes, 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 this is it, by looking at it through a cybernetic lens.
Okay, wait. I want to get into cybernetics, but I think before we do that, I want to show. I pulled up a clip of "All Watched Over" by Machines of Learning.
Yeah.
That, right?
Yeah.
It's just an intro. It's a minute. Hold on. Let's see here. Okay. Oh, hold on. I got to stop the screen. Do the thing. Technical difficulties. Okay. I think this is it. Oh no, that's the other video. Hold on, sorry. Like, I clearly did not plan for this thing, but okay, wait. While I'm looking that up, tell us, what is cybernetics?
Cybernetics is just the science of looking at systems of interaction between humans and machines.
Okay, got it. So let's watch this. Oh, it's a BBC thing?
Mm-hmm.
How the idea of the ecosystem was invented.
Mm-hmm. Here it is. It still gets me. It's so beautiful.
Whoa. Okay. Awesome. All right. So then the other part is that so hold on. I'm like, wait, like that there were so many feels. Like it's really, yeah, beautiful and challenging, which is awesome. So okay, so cybernetics, like how do you think, and cybernetics is the way that humans and machines communicate with each other?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you think that like a cybernetic shift would tangibly improve our society. So talk about that. So if the issue about the way that we're looking at society is one where it's more short term.
Mm-hmm. Actually, yeah, and so
yeah,
there's when you then practice that, you start with what seems like really abstract diagrams. And the simplest version is called a cybernetic loop.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if you want to Google image that real quick, you'll find a couple different examples.
Yep.
But how that works is actually as a metaphor for both human/animal and machine, of that we have a certain threshold or reference, as in like, I know things that look, smells, feel like that are apples. And then a sensor of some kind, there it is. And then we absorb, we sense the object or experience, and we detect whether there's a difference. And is it a positive, is it a negative difference, adjust according to that, and then goes into our controller, our brain, or our autonomous systems in our body, make a decision on how to react to that. And then, this is key, it should create a feedback loop where, based on the reaction to our action, we sense whether that was what we expected or not what we expected. And thus, we should then be able to adjust our next action based on that. I.e., fire at a bow and arrow at a target 100 times. You should be able to get closer and closer over time. Of course, this is the simplest version. This is like the most elementary. When you get to second, third order, fourth order cybernetic systems diagrams, what you start seeing is that there's a lot of spaces within spaces. That one with the cloud is actually a good one.
This one?
Yeah. So that actually illustrates where in the system between input and the controller, you can have a space of internal noise. Whereas opposed to processing simply color, shape, smell equals apple, equal and plus hunger equals eat, you might have a lot of different thoughts that are interacting with one another before you are able to make your decision. That might tell you this apple might be poisonous. This apple might be exported by a country that we don't like. This person that is a body shape or health state that I don't like loves apples. Therefore, I may not want to eat this. You start creating all of this internal noise that isn't directly related to the input you're getting in the moment, but think that it is just as valid as that direct input. And that's what I equate to the way that we are processing the news in this really short form causal reality, or even social interactions in this short form causal reality, which is really applicable now. And it's like masks themselves are being politicized to the point where we're having giant spikes in COVID-19 cases in states that reopened over Memorial Day weekend. Not to make this anywhere political, but that's not possible without this kind of erasure of ability to have clear feedback, which we have statistics for. We had daily reporting for a number of cases that the public could receive and understand, okay, the longer we are doing this, the less cases are rising. And instead adding a bunch of internal noise that then confuses the actual input you're getting. So the idea is to take kind of a broader view and look at facts and weigh direct input a lot more seriously than any kind of noise we have around us. And I find that documentary filmmaking helps with that. Also that in terms of like remote production, what we ended up trying out was that we wanted to celebrate love, right? But there are a lot of ways we could have let internal noise complicate that. And we touched on a couple of them, but I'm really glad we just pushed past them really quickly of like, will people feel weird about seeing you guys in the rose garden? Right? Will people feel weird about you guys touching? What is love today? Do people even want to, see this? And what if we had listened to all of that and adjusted all of these shots for that and the overall story so that it was safe, it was 6 feet apart, we were somehow demonstrating love between an actual couple at their wedding, socially distanced, I don't think we would have succeeded. But we were able to look at kind of the bigger picture and ground it also in our threshold was karaoke music videos.
Yeah.
Right? We know they have an effect. We know they work. Can we chase that and use that to tell your story? Right.
It's really interesting because like I think like I was really grateful that I was getting married underneath the quarantine times, like looking back, because for a couple of reasons, like weddings are so laden with symbols and narratives and, and lots of internal noise. I think, having done a ton of weddings and, but also nowadays, like corporate events and corporate experiences are also laden with like a lot of internal noise. I mean, coming from TED and just watching so many people copy a certain kind of format of storytelling, has been a pretty interesting journey that I've, reflected on over the past however many years. And I felt really grateful that I had the experience that it was my wedding that it happened to versus like me servicing someone else, because then I could make these calls, creative calls. I think if I was actually like helping as a producer, helping someone else's wedding, I've been like, wait, we can't show that we can't show that because that would,
Yeah.
you know, that's like breaking the law or whatever. But for me, I'm like, you know, like what's going to happen, you know, like I can deal with it. So it allowed me to take more risks. And like earlier, actually, like in the year, I had this like insight where I thought I've always been really sensitive to branding and personal brand and corporate brand and how people use brands and the stories that they load on top of images in order to manipulate behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
But actually watching Beyonce like build a business on her own person and then seeing that because it's her as an individual,
Yeah.
she can be vegan one day
Mm-hmm.
and just go there, right? And like I saw such freedom, right? Like in being able to really tell your own story as honestly as possible. You know, that like we just unfortunately I think don't get enough of with corporate, but with this whole like with all of the stuff with social media and the rise of the individual collective, right? I and authenticity, you know, like actually those people who are taking more of the risk to think about and contextualize the work that they present and the stories that they present in a larger narrative.
Right.
You know, even for me, it was like weddings. I was like, I constantly thought about like, yes, we referenced what's happening today. You know, it's kind, and I thought like that was great. Like all the moments where we were talking about quarantine, I just likened it to, you know, when I saw like my mom with her like 70s hairdo, like in her wedding portrait, like it's charming, right? You know, but overall, like I was like, this is the story that we tell like at our wedding is the story that like, you know, my kids will tell their kids. And so kind of rooting it like about having that there actually allowed me to push past some of the like immediate sort of I guess like filters that I would have put on, you know, the experience. That's cool that you also like went through. I was curious. Yeah, I was curious because we didn't talk. This is the thing. Like we didn't have all these conversations in the moment. But that's interesting that you went through that process too.
Yeah, and I think like that level of kind of the way that brands interact as individual into corporations or corporations posing as individuals is something I feel I'm just starting to get a handle on in the independent documentary field. But Beyonce, I think, is such a great example because if you look at all of her, I followed really closely all of her public testimonial, whether on social media or through her brand platform for Ivy Park, was fascinating to me in that like she was both really personal as the creator and founder at some points, but also really silently clear about the boundaries she was drawing between herself and what the company needed. And that would honestly a lot of times just be silence between seasons. And then when she debuts Homecoming, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. But I think it's an interesting space, and we're like, I think talking a little bit about this and pre-show is what I'm really mystified by, and I think we're all kind of going to need to engage with going forward, is that we are past a peak of an era where the personal was completely political no matter what. And right, for whatever like side you took on that, whether it was the conservatives quiet or it was the loud in your face declaration, I honor both choices, but we're kind of exiting that now as we have experienced fatigue and as we're actually united in a global pandemic. In, you know, while climate change was a global, you know, and still is, this one is immediate now. And so it has forced a uniting of experience. I think we're able to separate that a little bit more, the personal from the political, and understand that the personal is powerful, period. It has a power beyond the political interactions it's having with your audience. but that now this language, just like, video and filmmaking language, uh, has been really fully adopted and integrated into public discourse, right? Like kids on TikTok understand shot reverse shot better than presentation did growing up, but at the same way, like you and I will be using phrases like "I honor that," "I receive that," whereas our kids, whenever they emerge, if ever, will think of that as old-fashioned speech, and will have that ingrained in them. So I don't know. I'm really interested to see where the person in a company or a brand emerges in a way now that it's a little disentangled from the purely political, and it's not immediately in an embattled position to show yourself.
Yeah, dude, that was such a key insight, and I love that. Because it's true. I mean, even like professional and personal are being like I see inside of your house, and had this pandemic happened, we would have met at a fancy coffee shop or met in an office, right?
Yep, yep.
And I keep telling people that, like, and it's actually also part of your title or your descriptor of yourself. I'm like, this is the era of the multi-hyphenate. Anyone who embraces the multiplicity of skills, roles, identity, like they're just going to thrive and like navigate through all of this virtualness in such an easier way, I think, than those who are like kind of must be this. It's always difficult.
Yeah. So then I'm curious, I know we're just like starting into the first few months of this, and Happily is being extremely agile and ready for this shift.
Yeah. Someone was like, "What do you do?" And I was like, "What do you need, babe?" Like,
yeah, wrong question. What don't I? Yeah, but I'm curious, just in these early experiences, how much of this is reflected in early negotiations with clients about what they desire, and kind of that like mix of creative control versus request. Has it shifted at all for you?
it's really funny, but like a lot of the people who, I'm all funny, it's not the right term, but most people, I think I've just seen like the waves of first shock.
Right.
And then denial, and then like, okay, fine, acceptance, like this reluctant acceptance. And then the first place that it's so funny, but when you reluctantly accept things, like you tend to make the choice, like negative choices to like, I think, reinforce like how much you don't want to accept something. Right. So all of these creative producers were like looking at like technology, and in a way they're kind of looking at like what are our weaknesses and how do we build those things. And so we'd have people come to us and like say like, can you build a which technology can you recommend for over everything? And I was like, what's your story?
Right.
And like, I mean, this, like, it's like kind of like I don't know, like sometimes directors say like, I must make this on 8mm, right? Mm-hmm. But most of the time, like, you write a story and you're like, this part would be great on 8mm, and this part would be great in like digital, and this part would be great in like, motion graphics. And so that's how, I've been like, anytime people come to me, right? And then I'm like, okay, wait, like go make your story first. Or like, here's my plug. I started an accelerator just because people need to like kind of go through a course, for how to rethink, right? Yeah. The way that they approach it. But yeah, I think like I'm always like trying to help people first. What are you trying to say? And then just like how you did, right? Where it's like, okay, give me what you've got. I can like get to know who you are, get to see what, what the motivations are and where the sort of experience and the boundaries lie. And then present like ways to improve the story or make the story. And I think what events people do probably better than just straight screenwriters or filmmakers is how do we get people to emotionally interact with that.
Right. Right, exactly. Yeah, because that's just the beginning of that relationship. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So now I think it's kind of like I think it's really cool. Like I feel like the worlds of film, and the worlds of internet and the worlds of events are like coming together and combining their superpowers, you
mhm,
know. But and that's where I think the new collaboration for this like virtual event space is going to be really interesting,
mhm,
when you have like all three of those people at the table,
mhm.
or multi hyphenates, you know,
Mm,
who can navigate through both of those or all three of those worlds.
yeah, that's really cool to hear. I think there's like an experimental filmmaker, Zia Anger. Have you heard of her?
No.
So she's everyone out there that hasn't look up her like any kind of press on her film experience. I'm not sure what she wants to call it. Called My First Film, and it is a live stream experience that you have with her, where she limits number of attendees with virtual tickets to a limited stream, and then she collects the phone numbers of everyone as part of the ticket purchase. And it's largely a desktop film where she is communicating as narrator via a notepad, has some browser window open, which generally is her Instagram profile stories, which
Mm-hmm.
are all performance art pieces, and then iMessage, in which she is live texting with people.
Ooh.
But then she is able to take you from that to an incredibly personal journey that I won't spoil too much of it because all of it is really about going through it, but it is reliant on her commenting on and explaining a screening of her actual first film, her first feature that didn't get into any festivals, that didn't get any funding, and that she considered a failure, and what that meant for her as an artist, and also allowing space for all of us to interact with that as an audience that are also largely artists. So I walked away from that mind blown. Like I was introduced to it with a lot of mixed reviews, and no one was quite sure what to think of it. And I wasn't quite sure, but I knew I felt a lot. It felt like the equivalent of going to see like one of Nina Simone's early solo concerts. It was like, what are you doing? You are fucking with the entire presentational experience of film, and like doing live cinema or expanded cinema is not new, but the way she's doing it now is, and that feels like an incredibly intimate version of what you're talking about
Wow.
as well, right? And so I'm thinking about like, if I am, say, Apple Music, which we know is going through some kind of motions right now, and I want to put together an experience that is an event, right? I can't do that, but if I'm not paying attention, if I'm so confused by the technology, by the idea of virtual event, of virtual connectivity, and I get caught up in that, and I just copy paste, like you're explaining your experience with early TED Talk, like you're gonna fail because it's not fit for your size.
Mm.
I think that's another like parameter that we can deal with is like just in the world of films, the analog would be kind of runtime of like not every story needs 2 hours, most don't, and not every event needs 30 collaborators. Most may not, but some do, and some call for it. And how do you scale to that kind of rubric, and what is that rubric at this point?
Mm.
Seems like it's not a one-to-one that I'm speaking out of my element, I think, at this point of like when you get clients of certain sizes pre-quarantine, you can make certain deductions, right, for like what kind of events there you can pitch to them. Versus now, what are you looking at, right? Like reach or I don't know. I don't even know.
Yeah. Oh, I built this ROI calculator too that like helps like other people understand. Ultimately, there's a couple of new ideas in how to calculate like success, I guess. Like if you're a,
Mm,
you know, brand or whatever, or someone that's trying to, um, have a very specific narrative or message to your imagery. And it's honestly, I think it comes down to number of minutes viewed, like how long can a person or a collective of people who come actually sit with you. And that has nothing to do with how much budget you have, how much team you have.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Cause like now, analytics for pre-quarantine have gotten so complex, right? We're at fourth or fifth order levels of data where we're dealing with site-to-site interactions and returns, as opposed to the initial simplicity and innocence of clicks per impression. And now we're back to this, okay, how many minutes?
Yes.
Because as simple as that might seem, that's the gold standard of just actual human engagement.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to end us with a game that I invented.
Oh, cool.
and I used to watch so many I used to watch the game show channel when I was a kid, and I really just wanted to be a game show host. And I feel like I'm gonna do something actually where I just create all these game shows or recreate game shows for virtual and just try to get as many people to play them. But here's one of these things which I made because I have been broadcasting on our YouTube and our Happily, but also in my own private LinkedIn group. So I made kind of a LinkedIn based game. And I keep forgetting the name of it, but it's it's called Bad Search, Good Job, or Good Search, Bad Job, Good Job, Bad Search, Good Job, Bad Search.
Okay.
And what I did was I searched your name, and then all these, and I searched David Chun, even though you go by DS, which I really love that you go by DS. And I searched David Chun, and there's obviously a lot of David Chuns out there. And what the game is you are gonna guess, and I have 3 David Chuns, and, and you're gonna guess.
It's a dream of mine. I really like this.
Do you like this game? Okay, great. Because some people get really scared when I do it. And so there's 3 David Chuns that you're gonna see before you. One of them is a chief environmental health specialist at the County of Los Angeles Department of Public Health. These are real people. One of them is a software engineer at cars.com. And one of the David Chuns in this world is a real estate private equity at AEW Capital Management. And so you, David Chun, are going to guess what David Chun does.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay. Ready? David Chun, number 1.
Okay. Can I look at the choices again?
No. Yes, of course. Chief environmental health specialist, software engineer, real estate private equity.
Okay, and then it's a nice shirt. Yeah, he's younger. C?
Okay, so David Chun, number 1, you think is a real estate private equity.
Yeah.
Number 2, David Chun, number 2.
That looks almost exactly like my brother.
Really?
But his name is Peter, so.
Okay, I was like, did your mom name you?
Software at cars.com.
Okay, number 2 is software. Wait, what does your brother do?
Kind of hard to explain, but financial verticals analysis is the closest thing. Oh man, okay. I switched. Can I switch them?
Yeah.
Okay, so he is C, and the first one is A.
Okay, so private equity is number 3. Okay, and then number 1 is chief, and you think number 1 is chief environmental, right? But we're still stuck on number 2 is cars.com.
I guess so. I feel like I really don't understand myself now.
Okay. Wait, so I mean, isn't this fun? So now, drum roll, please. I need to get. You know what? I'm gonna bring this next time. I'm gonna ask Felipe, our resident musician at Happily, to make some a good search bad job music. We need music for this. Yeah, all right. Do 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 do. Okay, David Chun actually.
Oh!
So wrong. This was the software engineer at cars.com.
Oh man.
I feel like your guesses were pretty good. The David Chuns are sneaky. You
Yeah,
all.
what software engineer wears a suit?
I mean, cars.com is professional. Have you ever been to cars.com?
I think so. Wow, really? Yeah, that's super professional.
Yeah, that's suit engineer for sure.
High-end engineering.
Okay, number 2 is David Chun. The cars.com is actually a real estate private equity.
Wow, so relaxed.
And this David Chun is the chief environmental health.
Wow, so overachieving.
Right?
Wow, none of us dress like our jobs. What is happening? Am I dressed like my job? I don't even know anymore.
Experimental filmmaker with like a colorful vertical shirt. Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
On the note.
Yeah, I need to send a note to all of them.
Oh my god, I know, right? Wait, now I want to see your. Sorry, really quick. I'm gonna go to your. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm consistent. I'm getting my hair cut.
Yes. Everyone follow this David Chun. He's the best. We love you. Ching, 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 ching. Thank you so much for the journey and the wisdom.
Yeah, thanks for having me and the great questions and all the opportunity and the really interesting friendship so far.
It's been lovely. So I'm going to talk to you all the time. So talk to you later, but
bye.
Okay, so that was a really long one, which I enjoyed every minute of, and I could really keep, and I will actually keep going and like talking with DS. So thanks for joining us. Next week we are going to be on the same time, same bat channel, Wednesday, 2 p.m. PST. We are going to talk with another storyteller, a really interesting storyteller, who is RX Fogarty. Some of you might know him. He actually invented a storytelling process with the end product being a very, very powerful photograph called Dear World. And he is going to tell us about his latest project where he takes his Dear World process through the journey of nurses who have been in hospitals and helping with COVID patients. And it's amazing. I like get the chills every time I see it. And I'm so excited to talk with him. I hope you all will join me again next week. And in any case, have a wonderful day and see you later. Bye.